Hi, I'm Dr. D. Leitner, and welcome to the Doctor's Den, where I interview friends and former students to hear their stories, learn from their personal and professional growth, and hear about how they are engaging politics, strategy, and leadership in their everyday lives. So join us as we deep dive into the lives of everyday people and try to learn some important lessons along the way. Welcome to the Doctor's Den. Hey, welcome to the Doctor's Den. I'm Dr. David Leitner. My students call me Dr. D, and today we are hosting the student who gave me that nickname. Jeff Yeger was my student way back. Jeff is the VP of Customer Success at PeerSpot, the leading enterprise tech review platform. He has spent the last decade delighting customers with his human-first, high-touch approach to customer success. He is all about meeting the person behind the logo and helping every individual to meet their needs and reach their goals. In addition to customer success, Jeff spent 3 years as a tank commander, is a dad of 3, and would love to discuss the proper use of a table saw. Jeff Yeger, it is a pleasure to have you with us.
So nice to see your face. How you doing?
It's a pleasure to see you. Okay, so I have to start with the last thing you gave me here. The proper use of a table saw. Let's go.
Everyone always asks me about that. Here's the deal.
I mean, well, you did write it down. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I put it there. Here's the deal, right? If you enjoy woodworking of any kind, all right, and you've spent any significant time on it, which I have, you know that the way you go from like really beginner amateur woodworker to guy who's still an amateur and an idiot but has the tools to like be a professional is the difference is a table saw.
Okay.
And it'll blow your mind, but also it's the fastest way to lose your fingers on the planet.
Okay.
So I remain, after several years of table saw ownership, terrified of that tool, and I use it with great angst. And so before
my father would agree with you. I have to say that my father, who is a woodworker, he loves woodworking, and when I talked to him, he was like, "Oh yeah, table saw, definitely the topic to talk about." He was very clear on that, and he started giving me all kinds of tips. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. Jeff wants to talk about it.
I'll give you one tip. On
okay.
Table saw, okay?
Go for it. Yeah.
Aside from all the other tips of not losing limbs, here's the craziest one that I learned. You never wear a long sleeve shirt. Okay, because if you get too close to the blade and it grabs your shirt, it's pulling your whole arm in.
Ow.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
People learn that one the hard way.
I can only imagine. So my dad's tips were things like make sure you have a board that you can use as a pusher board, so you know that you're safe and your fingers are not getting anywhere near it. And he said, don't ever trust those "I'm gonna stop on time" mechanisms, because hogwash and poppycock.
I would agree.
So makes sense. Okay, so I kind of want to start this, and I want to explain a little bit of what we're doing here in this podcast. This podcast is about spotlighting my former students and some of my friends and acquaintances, people who I've met along the way, basically putting them on my metaphoric couch and going, okay, bring it. What are you going to teach me today? So I would love to learn about customer success from you. I would love to learn about what that means. Now, when we were in class, one of the things we spoke about was an ideational hierarchy, like that there are some core ideas, and those core ideas are always fighting, but there are certain ones that like sort of play at the top of that hierarchy and are always pushing to be the ideas. So I'd love to hear from you how that plays in customer success and what you've learned about that.
Wow, it's a tall order. Okay. Customer success was born out of this crazy idea that, obviously, not crazy, but facetiously crazy, that it is much, much cheaper as a business to retain the customers you already have than to try to acquire new ones. And there's an entire metric around this. It's called customer acquisition cost. And then there's all sorts of other metrics that, customer success looks at. And if it's interesting, we'll get into it. But the idea that having a really happy customer is much more cost efficient than a really unhappy one that you have to replace every year, or even more often than that. Right?
That makes sense.
Another crazy concept that people will actually enjoy being your customer. I know it's nuts, and I know it's something that sort of mom and pop brick and mortar businesses have known forever. You walk into a pizza store. The reason you go back to that same pizza store, it's probably the pizza, but it's also that you really like the people behind the counter. And it's always in the movies. You can tell them, I want my usual. And they know what it is. And that makes you feel good. It makes you feel like a human. Businesses don't know how to do that, right? And when I say businesses, I mean talking about more sort of corporations, less so kind of retail places.
You're talking like big business is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Are you only talking about big business in terms of big business to customer, or are you also talking big business to to business?
So I talk about there's B2B, obviously business to business, the B2C is business to consumer.
Right.
So
okay.
Not business to customers. Business to consumer is more like HP selling you a laptop.
Makes sense.
Business to business would be HP selling my company 1,000 laptops. I think in both cases, there's absolutely room for customer success. The difference is about scale, right? So we're already getting into maybe a more technical conversation, but it's very, very difficult to do customer success on a high level when you have 100,000 customers, or in the case of an HP laptop, probably 10 million customers. It's impossible to give me a one-to-one level of service. It's impossible to provide anything that's very custom. It's still possible to provide very good service. Customer success finds its niche. Well, maybe I'll take a step back. Customer success means a lot of different things depending on the company you're at. So at a very, very large company, or at a company that has a very either basic product or easy to acquire product, like going online and downloading a video player or a zip unlock file, type software. Those companies would often have what you call kind of low touch or tech touch customer success. That would be more where, if I had an issue, I could probably log a support ticket. Somebody might get back to me in a few days. They might direct me to an FAQ where I could.
Is that more? If I could ask, is that more like customer service? Is that how you would like make that like customer service versus customer success? Is that how you might differentiate those?
Exactly. So customer support, and that's why I said customer success means a lot of different things depending where you are. Sometimes it's just a fancy term for customer support.
Okay.
But the idea of customer success as it evolves in the industry is less sort of reactive support. It's less come to me when you have an issue and I'll try to solve it for you. It's more let me anticipate your business needs proactively, and let me come to you with what I think you need. Right. So a lot of companies nowadays will actually separate out two functions. One being customer support and one being customer success. One more focused on sort of more technical, reactive needs, and one more focused, if you were selling, security, that person would help you plan your security architecture. If you were, we're in the services business where I am very much involved in where's the customer headed next, right? And let me design an offering, let me design a program that focuses on where you're going and not where you're at now. Because if I sell you where you're at now, from your perspective, it'll be useless in 2 months. And from my perspective, I will stop providing value to you in 2 months. And so you'll stop buying from me and I'll stop making money from you. Exactly.
Yeah, because that's useless to you, right? Like, what does that help you? All right. So you didn't grow up, though, in like, grow up in customer success. You sort of developed into customers, like as a position, sort of developed into this thing of customer success in PeerSpot, right? Was it customer success at the very beginning, or were you part of the process of developing that? Because if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I remember seeing you like posting and sending up things about how you grew, and then you became the vice president of customer success, but it wasn't always really the way you're describing customer success today. Was it?
Yeah, it's a fair question. So I started the company in a position called SDR. So
okay.
I'd done a very similar position to customer success for 3 years at my previous company. I showed up at this one, and I said, let's do something different. Let's try a new challenge. There was a very position that was gaining a lot of popularity at the time. It's very popular now, especially for people who want to get into tech. That's a plug, by the way. If you want to get into tech, you can often get a job as an SDR if you're hungry and work hard. SDR, basically sales development representative, means my job is to do the hardest, dirtiest work of the whole company, which is I need to go out and go ahead.
It's cold calling, right? It's like, I got to make calls. I got to get people on the line. I got to see if I can give them a hook, right?
I need to get people to give me 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, I need to say something that's interesting enough to this specific person that they will give me more time later.
Right.
And I'm judged on setting these meetings, and it is a horrifically difficult position. I applaud anyone who's successful in it. I think it's an amazing way to learn at a new company, and
Okay.
it is the moment you finish that job, all the other jobs feel easier. But
All right, let's see. But that's important. I got lots of. I mean, I've had students who've been like, "I want to get into high tech," and I'm like, "Okay, you could do SDR. It's a hard job. It's annoying, and you're gonna get a lot of like, where like you're just gonna get those phone calls where there was like, no thanks, click, and you have to be willing to deal with that. And you're like, I don't want to do that.
You need to be able to get rejected constantly and not take it personally,
right?
because first of all, you are not the only SDR calling this person. And second, it takes a while to get good at. And so in my case, I started there. I was only in that position for about 4 months. What happened was that there was some reorg and a position opened up in customer success. I guess they looked at my resume and saw that I had experience in it. And so I walked in one day. It was actually the day I got back from paternity leave with my son. I walked in. My boss calls me into his office. I was sure I was getting fired. And he says, you do customer success now. That's your job. So it sort of started there. At that point, there was one other person on the team. She was great. She, developed a lot of sort of, I guess, the methodologies and motions that we use. But she left a short while after. Somebody else joined the team, and then it was basically me and that other person building this team for the last, and obviously many people joined along the way, but we started about 5 years ago on this journey, and we grew it from a team of 2. Now we're I think we're 14 now.
Okay.
And we it's definitely not the same team it was, no question. You talked about sort of ideational hierarchy, so there's really a few ideas that in my version of customer success, the one that we've chosen for our company, really dominate the way we think and the way we plan and the way we build. Number one is, and I already mentioned it, is the central word is proactivity, right? We are not here to field your questions and, write documentation to help you out. We do that too, but we are here to proactively spend all of our time thinking about your business and thinking about you. I have a patent pending theory. Maybe we'll get it into your next seminar. I call it DOGAS, DOGAS. If you'll excuse my French, it stands for degrees of giving a shit. And what that means is every single person you speak to at a company, right, in our case, every one of our customers, depending on what they do, depending on how high up they are in the org, depending on who they are as a person, they're going to give a different amount of shit about their job and about the company they work at. And so if you march into the room with a one size fits all attitude of, you work at Cisco, and so I'm here to really help you make Cisco the best place it can be. Most people, that's not going to resonate for, because they don't care about Cisco.
Right. It's not something that they're ideationally attached to. It's not something that they feel like, I'm an agent of Cisco and this Cisco is so important to me that I care about it. But I'm assuming.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question. Does the level of would you expect a vice president, for instance, to have a greater sense of personal attachment to that, or does that not? Is it not based on where they are in the hierarchy? It's more about their own personal feeling. Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
I would absolutely. It 100% does. I wish I could show you the chart, but I would absolutely expect that a vice president of a company would be more tied personally and professionally to the overall goals of the company.
That makes sense.
Because they've probably been there longer. They probably have more to lose. They have more of a reputation at the place. And at the end of the day, the people who, get to that point get there because they care. You don't really put in the hours and put in the time if you don't. And so the theory basically says it's our job as a proactive team to understand where does the person that is on the other side of the phone, where do they fall on that spectrum? Are they entirely interested in their own goals and their own KPIs? Are they really only worried about their manager thinks about them? Are they looking to get a promotion? Are they trying to make a big change and just need some help to get it done? Or do they really only care about what do I feel like when I go home at the end of the day? And and the model that we've chosen is, you read it in the bio. It's called high touch. Mm-hmm. It means that we have a very low ratio of customers to customer success manager.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody on my team has more than 20 customers.
Okay.
And that's because we want them to truly understand the person on the other side. We want them to understand, what do they care about? What are they thinking about? What are their goals? And at the end of the day, we might have an amazing solution for Cisco or for Microsoft or for Dell, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And it some cases won't always make a difference, because the person that we're talking to, um, it isn't what they need to hear. What they need to hear is, I understand that you have these three targets, and this is my solution to solve for those. And that's, for me, that's a very central tenet of our customer success, is proactivity and humanity. Those are the big two.
So are you using something like design thinking's first stage process of getting inside the customer's head and really like seeing what they're seeing, hearing what they're hearing what they're hearing, thinking what they're thinking, trying to see their main issues, the main things that are obstacles in their way that are making their lives difficult, and that's how you're getting it there? Or do you have a methodology that you're using for that, or is it and that's a strategic question, because I don't know if you remember back when we learned strategy, but one of the things we talked about was, the strategic stage, the part that the vice president essentially states it, is we need information. We need to know what's going on so that we can best move forward. And it sounds like customer success is all about getting that information and keeping that information flowing for success.
100%. So before I ever get any of that information, I need to show them why they need to give me the information.
Right.
Why do they need to invest their time in telling me what they know? So there is a lot of importance in stating, why am I standing in front of you? So I don't have my own customers at this point. My team has the customers, but the very first thing you do on a call is you explain to them, who the hell am I? Right? Why am I here? Why do you need to spend your time on me? Why am I going to ask you to talk to me every 2 weeks for 30 minutes? I'm here to make sure that you get what you bought. Right? You didn't buy a product, you bought an outcome, and I need to get it for you. Right? There's a basic sort of calculation that goes into customer success.
Okay.
It's basically customer success equals customer outcome plus customer expectation. And the way that's sort of defined is, customer success equals the customer achieving their desired outcome while having their desired experience.
I have a question there. You said it's about outcome. It seems to me like it's more about the relationship. Like, based on what you just said, like everything you just said is customer success is, we want you to have a good relationship with us, and we are going to put our time and energy into it. If you will give us a little bit of time on your part, we're willing to put in the time and energy to make you as successful as possible.
So this is where the part of it being a business comes in, right? At the end of the day, they don't really, meaning they'd love to have a great relationship. It's much more fun to work with a vendor that you really like. We're a vendor. At the end of the day, we could have the best relationship in the world. We could be, drinking Mai Tais together every weekend. If they don't get the results, the outcome that they need, they can't justify the money they spent. They don't get return on investment. So we build strong relationships to the effect of achieving a business outcome.
That makes sense, because that's the purpose of the relationship, the underlying core purpose. Like, if we think again back to what we learned in strategy, purpose drives, vision, which drives objectives, which drives KPIs and goals, and gets us to act in specific ways. So if we're saying that, then you have to speak to their purpose and make sure that you're meeting their KPIs or helping them meet their objectives to help them meet their vision, right? So, but that makes sense in a lot of relationships. A lot of relationships are like that. I'm not necessarily talking about husbands and wives, but like, I mean, even there though, you kind of hope that you're helping each other out.
I wanna live a good life. I want to live.
Yeah, like you want to have a happy marriage.
Yeah, I'll answer your original question, by the way, which is framework.
Okay, go for it.
Framework is incredibly important in sales and customer success, and I'm assuming every profession. But customer success has the benefit, at least in the last decade or so, of having really exploded across most industries. Right, it's become very popularized just in general. People understanding that there are so many vendors out there. There's so many potential companies you could work with. You're going to work with the one that is really enjoyable to work with and that gives you the outcomes you need. So the methodology for customer success has been very much templatized across the industry. Now, you can take what people have built, customize it for you, but it basically goes, the very first thing you do with a customer is you onboard them. Onboarding includes something called, in sales and CS terminology, called discovery. Right? Discovery means, I need to figure out, what are you all about? One of the first questions I ask when we get a new customer, And I know this because I know the answer to this question already in most cases because I've spoken to sales. But the first thing I usually ask in some way or another is, why did you buy this? What were you hoping to achieve? What made sense to you when this was sold to you? And sometimes they bought it a month ago and they're only, it took a while to get a contract signed, whatever. And their answer changes. And it's always great to ask, why did you buy this? What are you looking to achieve? Okay, now let's put us aside for a second. Forget all about us and our products. Nobody cares about us. Talk to me about you. When you wake up in the morning, what do you think about? One of my favorite questions to ask is, when you present a budget, when you ask for money, what are, from management, from your CFO, whatever it might be, what are the things that you ask for money for? Meaning, what are the areas you're responsible for funding and are responsible for actually achieving goals in? And that's the first step, is onboarding. Is I need to, first of all, understand what are they all about, and then I need to get them accustomed to my product, right? I need to explain to them how it works. If there's technical integrations we have to get done, that's onboarding. The next step is adoption. I actually need to get them to use the product. It could be amazing. It can answer all their needs, but if they didn't use it, they're never going to buy it again. So we go through that. That's the majority of the relationship, is actually adoption. It's making sure that they're using the product as it's intended, or maybe not as it's intended, but in a way that serves them best. After that goes usually, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear it, and then I'll ask the question.
Yeah, the last two bits, the third bit is usually the most obvious, is renewal, right? I come to you and I make a case for why you need to buy this again. And renewal also comes along with upsell and cross-sell. Upsell meaning buy more stuff from me. And cross-sell can mean introduce me to other people you work with because I want them to buy too. And then the last stage is something that customer success has done a magnificent job of transforming, is called advocacy. Where, okay, I've got this person who loves my product. They've bought it again. They're a big fan. Maybe you could film a case study with me. Right? Or maybe,
would you advocate for me? Would you be a partner in advocating for me?
Yeah. Next time my sales team is talking to somebody and trying to convince them that we're the right people to go with, maybe you could talk to that prospect for us. Maybe you could make the case on our behalf. We've invested in this relationship with you. Would you mind reciprocating? And then it's a flywheel from there, right? They'll advocate. Hopefully they'll buy more. We'll do a new onboarding. We'll learn their goals again. Meet new people that join the team. etc., and go through the whole cycle. But that's
the whole process again. So you basically give me five stages there, right? Which goes back to like things we learned in class. There were 5 stages to the creative process of, get hit with an idea, learn about that idea in depth, or create the ideal version of that, use the information you need, then create objectives and goals together where you're really saying, hey, this is what we want to do with this. Here are the resources we have. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's the value systems that are important to you as the customer that we need to work with to make it work for you. And here's the technical maneuvers.
By the way, there's one-to-one things I took from your class, like RACI frameworks. I don't know if anybody's ever used those, but you got a big group of people and you're trying to get a project done. Okay, well, who's responsible? Who's accountable? Who do I need to consult with? And who do I just inform?
Right.
Plucked it straight from my notes, put it into work, and it helps. You got 30 people in the room, or in a project, or at a vendor, and there's got to be one person in charge, but everybody else wants to know what's going on. You build a chart, you assign it, get people to go to work, and theory. I can't say always, because a lot of my schooling was theory, but in many cases, theory actually does have practical application. If you find
that's important.
For it.
I'm really glad to hear that. All right, so I guess the next question I'd really like to deep dive with you for a minute is, when we spoke about politics, I didn't teach politics as like, I took government, and then we spoke about politics, where politics was like clashing ideas. What does CS clash with? Where's the friction that CS has in business? Both, I would say, externally with like other companies, but which I think you've given me a pretty good idea of where that friction lies. It's like, can you get the information you need? What do you have to, like, what friction is there in getting it? But there's got to be friction internally too in CS, where CS is basically, I don't want to say competing with, because I don't think that's the right term, but is somehow not jiving with other parts of a company. How have you experienced that?
It's a very astute question. The number one thing I took from any of the political science courses I took was it's all about power, right? Politics is power. The other thing I took is that, I took a bunch of stuff. The other thing that resonates very much with me is that the two things that seem the furthest on the end, if you put them in a circle, they're actually right next to each other.
Right. The pizza pie theory.
So, Yeah, you've got your what was it, your anarchists and your communists, and and so what? So the number one clash that customer success has, funny enough, is with sales. That's the biggest all time clash is customer success and sales. And what's
Okay.
funny is because they're supposed to be sitting right next to each other. They're supposed to be helping the customer. When in reality, they can often be at opposite ends of the spectrum, because the sales goal will often be, I need to bring in as much money to the company as possible, rightfully so. And customer success job is, I need to make sure this customer is successful as possible. And those don't always mean the same thing, right?
Right.
Sometimes sales will sell things that the customer does not need.
Ooh.
Or, they'll build a package that doesn't accomplish any specific goal that the customer set out. And there's a lot of reasons for this. I'm not here to bash sales. I really think they have an incredibly hard job. But
No,
it's
I'm not.
really
I want to be really clear. I'm not asking you to bash sales. I'm asking about
but
that I'm asking about that friction,
about
though, because
friction.
I think the friction's important.
Yeah. The friction comes where it's really, really hard to get a deal from start to finish. Okay, there are so many stages that you go by. First of all, you have to get someone on the phone. It's
Right,
unbelievably
SDRs.
difficult.
That goes back to what you said.
If there's an SDR, many salespeople do their own cold prospecting themselves to make sure their pipeline is full. They don't want to rely on anybody else for their income. You need to actually get somebody on the phone. Incredibly difficult. Then you need to take this person who's never heard of you before and has no idea what you do, and convince them that you are worth another conversation. It's hard. From there, you need to convince them that they should take their hard-fought budget that, we're in a horrible economy right now. They have less and less and less of, and they need to give it to you. And then during all of that, you need to get through legal, you need to get through procurement, you need to get through their boss and their boss's boss and the CMO and the CEO and God knows who else is approving things these days. And you need to do all of that without making any mistakes about amounts you can deliver or, what we're able to sell, blah, blah, blah. And you need to somehow, in all of that mess, figure out what this customer actually needs. It's incredibly difficult. And the longer you stretch it out, the longer you wait, the more likely that deal falls through. And the more likely it doesn't come in at all, the more likely you lose that commission and the company loses a new customer. And so it's incredibly hard to do really effective sales and also sell really effective stuff. It's hard. And so customer success, unfortunately, but understood, will spend a lot of time fixing mistakes. Or even if it wasn't a mistake necessarily, sort of rebuilding whatever the customer bought to be a better fit to what they need. So the biggest friction is definitely sales and customer success, where I'm telling you I will not get a renewal if you don't sell it the right way. And they're telling me, well, I'm not going to get it over the line in the first place.
So is there a way, is there a way for you to work in tandem where what you've learned about customer success can help sales, where it's like, hey, we want to talk to your guy as part of your sales thing. We're not taking your sale from you. We're not going to make it less yours, but we're going to say, from our experience, here's what we know. From our customer success experience, our customers, they've come with A, B, and C, here's the things that we've had to deal with, and as part of that, would you like to consider that now, or would you like to discuss that later once you've already moved on? Have you started working through that, how you move through that friction, or is it still too early? I mean, 5 years isn't that long a time to have built. I'm being really honest. Like, to have built something, what you've built in 5 years, I think is phenomenal. And the fact that you're a VP is, I gotta tell you, I like keep going. I have a student who's a VP. I think it's phenomenal. No, I'm honest. I'll be honest with you, dude. I am proud of you. I think it's phenomenal and amazing and spectacular, and I cannot, good for you.
Thank you.
So I'm curious.
I'll tell you in the short version, there's an easier way, and this is what I've learned anyway, what's been pretty effective for us. There's an easier way to fix the problem than going to sales and going no. It doesn't work, because the fact that I get annoyed at them doesn't make their job any easier. It doesn't change the reality on the ground. That's where the beauty of customer success comes in, with how tied in it is to all the other teams of the organization. At the end of the day, the way I look at it, the way my CEO looks at it, the way I think most people should look at it is, if there's a team at the company that is not in some way advancing the well-being of our customers, why do they exist? Right? At the end of the day, the customers pay the bills. I mean, the literal definition of a business, I believe, is having a customer. So if there's a function of the business that isn't focused on customers, it should start. So customer success is often involved with every function. If it's finance, if it's products, if it's development. We have a team called delivery, which literally delivers our product because it's just not a simple SaaS solution you download. Implementation team, support. Everybody needs to be aligned around the fact that there is a customer out there. That customer pays all of our salaries. So let's make sure that we give them a good experience. So the easiest way I've found, and not easy, just the easiest way to mitigate, I won't say solve, I'll say mitigate customer success and sales friction is let's create a framework through which both outcomes are achieved simultaneously. So if sales has the ability to sell something that isn't valuable to a customer, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Mm-hmm. Let's just change the product they can sell, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just change that. If there's an approval process they have to go through in order to sell something that's non-standard, great, let's create an approval process, right? There's something called the CPQ. Deal Hub is the one that we use, and it's basically a system for CPQ is something price quote, I forget. But it's basically a system for which sales reps create proposals. And in order to create a proposal, there are the standard things they're allowed to sell on their own. These are our standard pricing, standard offerings. And if they want to sell something non-standard that theoretically my team might get a little ticked off about, there's an approval process to go through. I'm part of that approval process, right? They can come to me and say, here's why I think we have to do this. And I'll say, you know what, this is worth it. Or I'll say it's not. And then if me and whoever's in charge on the other side don't agree, we'll go up a level. And sometimes I lose, sometimes I win. But
up a level for you means going up to like the big boss, doesn't it? I mean, that's up a level.
It did up until a couple months ago. We have somebody new, really exciting. She is our executive vice president of revenue. So she owns all of sales and customer success as one.
Oh, cool.
So she would sort of be the tiebreaker now.
So you have a buffer. Your CEO now has a buffer, and he doesn't have to choose which one of you he likes better, right, in the moment.
I would say I have a buffer. I don't have to go to the CEO with everything. But that's usually how it works. So meaning to shorten it, it would be don't what's the old saying, like Kobayashi Maru, right?
Yeah.
Don't like try to break through the wall you can't break through. Just change the rules.
Right.
If you don't like the game that they're playing, just make a new game. They're selling stuff I don't like. Okay, well let me make it impossible for them to do that.
So you're using game theory. Essentially, you're using game theory, and you're creating a zero-sum game for them. You're saying one of us is going to win. I have to make sure it's me because it will make sure that in the end it helps out both of us.
And I don't want to make it sound like I don't have to compromise, because there are a lot of cases where I do have to compromise, and it's the right thing to do from a business perspective. But if we always listen to me, we probably have half the sales that we do.
Okay? I wasn't saying. Okay, so I wasn't clear. I didn't mean, because zero sum doesn't actually have to be absolute zero sum. There are zero sum games where both people win. Right? Remember, there's it was the thing where you had win win, lose lose, and then lose and lose, and you're choosing we're both gonna win. We know won't always win all the time, but it'll be good for both of us, and therefore it'll be good for the company.
Exactly. And in many cases, it's been proven long term that I'm wrong, right? Where I said we probably shouldn't do this. It's too experimental. We're not ready. We're going too fast. And, my counterpart says, look, we have a huge opportunity here to bring in a ton of money. Customers are asking for it. Get with the program. And there's an Amazon concept. Not that we're anything like Amazon, but I heard this and I thought it was really telling. Where they have a concept in meetings which is called disagree and commit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
huge important thing.
Yeah, you don't agree. Okay, but the decision's been made. Get on board.
Right.
You can disagree all you want, but get with the program.
Right.
We also have another Amazon concept I think we've stolen. Actually, two more, but this one's relevant. It's basically you've got decisions that are one-door decisions and two-door decisions. So
I've been teaching those the last 4 or 5 years. Those are both things that I've been teaching. I think they are so important.
Should I explain it or?
No, go ahead. I want you to explain it. Please do, because I love teaching it. I love the fact that I didn't even teach it to you, and you're using it. I think it's great.
I use this one. Has helped me make decisions a lot in my personal life as well.
Mm-hmm.
A two-door decision basically means you make the decision. You don't like it. It's not a big deal. Walk it back. Right? Just turn around and go right back through the door. Nothing's going to change, not much damage or minimal damage, and it's fine. What's a good example? You sold your car, bought a new car, you hate that car. Okay, sell it. You get a different
Or
one.
you bought something, return it. Are you still within the time frame that you can return it?
Yeah.
Go return it. It's not that big a deal.
Not a huge deal. Then you have one-door decisions. Those are the ones that generally require a tremendous amount of planning and forethought, and walking them back is not a simple thing. Marriage might be a good one. Having a kid, pretty big one. Moving jobs is definitely a one-door decision in many cases. When you leave, you will not often be welcomed back. Where you decide to study in school is you're 2-3 years in, you're just not going to go do a new degree. You're going to stick with that one.
Right.
So you got to take a lot of time considering it. And there's plenty of those decisions in business when you decide to stop selling a product. And, well, actually, maybe that could be either way. But, you decide you have what's called a bad fit customer, and you don't think we should be working with them anymore, and you decide to let them go, and you don't fight for them. That's a decision you have to make at some point. Letting somebody go on your team is a one-way door decision. Right?
Yeah, because they're not going to want to come back when you fired them.
They're not coming back.
It's very rare.
So and this is true, by the way. It's not just for leaders. It's not just for, even though I think everybody could obviously be a leader in whatever they're doing. It's for every single person, every single decision that you make. There is always, and by the way, it could go to the very smallest things. Like if I have a big steak, okay, and I want to cook it for dinner, I can either put it on the grill or put it in the oven. I cannot do both.
Right, and once you've committed, you kind of committed. Not necessarily. You could take it out of the oven and throw it on the grill, or vice versa.
Yes,
but
I'll probably destroy it.
But it probably won't do so good for the steak. I love the fact that you're using strategic thinking. Like you're actually saying, I apply strategic thinking everywhere. I'm using it in my everyday life, and that's something which was so important for me to teach. Is that strategy is not just something we do in business or in the military. It's something we actually engage with, like, everywhere. We engage in setting goals and using different concepts. We don't know we're doing it, I think, most of the time. But you sound like you are saying, hey, strategy is not, like, as a vice president, I now understand strategy really well because I've gotten to the strategic stage where I'm having to engage in it all the time. And I'm seeing it everywhere. Would that be a pretty true statement?
Yeah, I do think that business could sometimes be a decent microcosm for life. You have a lot of personal relationships. You have struggles. You have things that frustrate you, things that excite you, and big wins and big losses. And I found a lot of what I've learned in business to be very applicable to my life. I'm not going to go to my wife and be like, "Hey, we got to cook for the weekend. Can we do a RACI framework to figure out who?" I'm not going to do that. But I certainly think that there's a benefit to, like, yeah, go ahead.
I know people who will use a whip to do their Shabbat prep. Like they'll set up like a board with like and they'll work their way through the board just like they would do in a project management thing, because it's an easy way to know who's doing what and when it's getting done. And
it totally works. I think that there's strategy finds its ways into very funny places. It's January 2nd. You decided you're on a new diet, and your strategy for making sure you stick to that diet is making sure your spouse is on the diet with you, and that way you won't have any crap in the house. That's strategy.
It's about finding allies and getting them on. Yeah. Okay. All right. I have 2 more questions, then I have another topic that I kind of want to just quickly broach with you. You've had 5 years here doing this. What was your major failure? What was something that you, like, a failure that you really learned something from, that made it like it was like oh my God, that sucked, and I just learned so very much from that, and it was so important. And you don't have to get into the details, but like I'd love to hear like the general, this is kind of what happened, and this was the major lesson from it, because I'm learning here, so teach.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something like catastrophic. Probably have this on the tip of my tongue. I get it all the time. It's look, there's maybe a few different categories of failures. I mean, there's like personal failures, where every time I've ever had to let somebody go, I feel like a huge failure. Right? At the end of the day, it's my team. I hire them, and it's my decision to bring them on. And if they don't work out, there's nobody to blame but me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a stab in the heart, definitely every time. And it's not something that gets easier with time. Um, and it's something that I don't want to say you have to learn to deal with, because I don't know if you can, because you've just sent somebody home and they don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. That's your fault.
Right.
So not everything is glamorous. Not everything is VP.
I mean,
Big office, whatever. Like, there's real world implications to it, and you're affecting real people.
right.
So I take every one of those as a big failure, no question. And then there's certainly failures with customers that I've had. I mean, a particular one that comes to mind, and it's a failure that I still don't know what I would have done differently. That's the truth. But there was a
Fair enough.
customer of ours who spent $500,000 one year, which is a decent amount. It's not our biggest customer, but it's a good amount.
Okay.
And they were such a great customer. We built such great relationships. I found myself in their office in San Jose, like 6 or 7 times that year. It got to the point where, like, people recognized me in the hallways of this building, saying hi, and I started introducing people who worked at that company who didn't know each other. And me and this guy, we were working on it together. And the end result was that the following year they spent $0. They went from $500,000 to $0. And
Wow.
I don't know exactly what I've done differently. There are some obvious things that come out. First is, I think I got too caught up in how well it was going that I didn't spend any time thinking about what could go wrong. Right?
Okay.
It was very exciting and very fun, and everybody was congratulating us at work. So high fives in the hallways, but we never looked at the risk factors. Right? There's what do they call them? This strategy framework.
Well, in our framework, it was risk versus. I mean, it was command versus risk. You were saying I was so in command. I felt like I was so in command of the situation that chance wasn't really. I didn't see how chance was playing a role here, right?
Yeah.
You
So
didn't see.
one of the popular frameworks we used it for a while is called SWOT,
Sure.
which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Mm-hmm.
So we were definitely big on strengths. We were definitely big on opportunities. I think we were very weak on weaknesses, and non-existent on threats.
Okay.
What happened is one of our competitors moved in and took over, and that was a big loss for me. And they to this day we have not recovered them.
Do you know? Were you aware? I'm curious. Did you have any foreknowledge that this competitor was even in the game at the time?
Yeah, I did. I did, and I was so confident in what we were doing, and so confident in the relationships we'd built. And we'd met the C-level people, and we'd done all sorts of interviews and blah blah blah. And I think we were. It was almost call it hubris, if I can exaggerate.
That's not exaggeration. I'm sorry.
We were sure. We were sure,
Yeah.
and we were dead wrong. So that was. I'm not going to name the specific customer, but that was definitely a big loss for me. Something I took a lot of lessons from for how to engage not just with our largest customers, but also how do we start recognizing signs of deterioration.
Right, where chance is starting to play really starting to play its role, and you're saying, wait a second, these chances are now impactful on our ability to hit these objectives and maintain our capacity to do that over time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And with that, I would say that the top way to mitigate that is what we spoke about earlier, or maybe the third key word. What I mentioned is humanity. What I mentioned is proactivity. The last sort of hierarchy is value. Right? At the end of the day, they can love me as much as they want. I could love them as much as I want. They could be dying to work with me. They cannot justify that investment in me. They cannot show very clearly the value that I have presented to them. There's no chance. And I think that's really where we fell short. Is we invested very heavily in the relationship, invested very heavily in, good vibes, and did not invest heavily enough in value that C-level was going to care about.
So if we were to translate that, if I were to translate that into stuff we kind of learned in class, what you're saying is you were thinking really on the tactical level, the maneuvers that you were doing and how you were going to control the situation as it was, and you weren't seeing how the operative and strategic levels were being impacted by change in the environment around you, right? And what that meant for you was you were no longer able to provide for the person who was the receiver of your ideas or your thing, what they needed to be able to continue the relationship. Is that an accurate way of saying it? Is that would you say that?
Absolutely. We were stuck here, and we needed to be looking up here.
We need to be looking up here, right?
We went bottom up, but we didn't go up enough, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, we got stuck. It's not a mistake we've repeated since, I can say happily. We've done a much better job doing a well-rounded approach towards, retaining our customers, and things have improved. But yeah, absolutely, that was a big loss, big failure.
Okay. All right, I have two more questions. One of them is just what's kind of like one thing that you would like to change in your world, and how are you acting as a catalyst for that change? Like, what's one thing that you look at and you go, I want to change this. This is so important for us to change, and I'm doing my damnedest to get that thing done. This is important.
My company and my life.
I don't care whether it's you choose. I don't care. Company, personal life. I mean, if you want to go personal life, I'm like, this is, like I said, I'm putting you on the metaphorical couch. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll be very candid with you. We've spoken a lot about business here. Yeah. And work is, maybe work or jobs in general are going through some sort of evolution now, because during Corona, they were so de-emphasized. It was, now it's all about flexibility and being, my life, but now we're going through a recession, and now it's all about having a great job. Work plays a really funny, fickle, intense part in our lives. And I personally, I tie a lot of my self-esteem to how I'm doing at work. Mm-hmm. It's a problem for me, right? Okay. Where I will allow it to affect my relationships. I allow it to affect my mood, allow it to affect my approach and how I think about myself. And I spend a lot of time at work. I spend a lot of time. It's 5 o'clock. I've been here for the last 8 hours. I'll be working till midnight. Like, I have a lot to do. And it's something big I am trying to change for myself. And, Rosh Hashanah was just here. I have my own New Year's resolutions, is I need to tie less of my worth to my job. It doesn't mean I don't want to be good at my job. I do. It's really important to me. I also happen to really enjoy, I'd probably enjoy any job. I have to enjoy this one also, because I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy spending time with people. I enjoy using my brain. I enjoy, watching metrics that I can track, numbers improve because of the work I'm doing. It doesn't matter what they are and what they're improving, but I am affecting change in the world, or at least in this small world that I work in. Right. But I am a valuable person and a valuable member of society and a valuable something with no relation to my job title or my salary or my place of business or how nice the office is here. And I could go from this tomorrow to any other job or no job at all. And my value as a human isn't going to change. So that's something I'm trying to change for myself, is I need to detach my self-esteem from how effective I am at work.
Cool. I have a question. Do you think that some of your team would benefit from hearing that and learning that from you?
I'm pretty vocal about it. I'm pretty vocal. Yeah. And I say this, maybe I'm a little even too blasé. I'll tell them all the time that what we're doing here doesn't matter. All right. We're not solving cancer. We're not solving world hunger. We're not, ending a war. We're running a technology company. And, within the sphere of this building, it really matters. But don't prioritize this over your health. Don't prioritize this over your mental well-being. Don't miss your kid's birthday party because I said a meeting, move the meeting. Right. So,
or tell me you can't show up and we'll figure it out.
So I'm vocal. Listen, I'm also pretty vocal about how high my expectations are. Right. I'm vocal about we have targets. You want to be on the team. You want to be here. Then, I need to know you're in. But we try to find a balance. So yeah, I think I'm pretty open with that message, and I think it's well received.
No, that message is not the same message that you just said, though.
Oh,
see, I'm calling you out on this one.
Yeah, please.
Just like I would in class. The message you just said was, your work is not your life. You're allowed to have a life outside of work. That's not the message you just said. The message you just said was, do not judge your self-worth based on the work that you're doing. That is not what where your value in life should come from. Are you telling that to your people? Are you saying to them, your value doesn't come from here, it's from who you are as an individual? It's not the work-life boundaries that you were just talking about. And I gotta admit, I don't like the idea of work-life balance, because it's not true. I firmly believe in the idea of work-life boundaries, and how those boundaries may change a little bit over time based on position. Like you said, you're going to be there till 12. I'm sure your wife would love to have you home now at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm sorry that I'm keeping him late, but that's not what we're talking about. That's one thing. The thing you just brought up is a much deeper thing to teach your people, which is, guys, you have worth no matter what. If you fail here in something, that doesn't detract from your worth as an individual. It might detract a little bit from your worth here in the company, but it should not, and I will not let it impact you as a person. You should still know that you are a good person, you are a worthwhile person, you are a friend, you are somebody who I care about. And even if I have to let you go because of your failures, you are somebody who I care about and you have worth. Those are two very different statements.
There's probably two reasons I don't share that message with my team.
Okay, go ahead.
One is, I think I'd be projecting.
Okay, fair enough.
Right? I don't know that other people struggle with that. They might. If I'm the average person, then probably the average person does struggle with it.
Okay.
The other part is, there's a boundary to what my role is as a leader.
Okay.
And I think that would be crossing a boundary.
Okay.
This is and again, to sort of quote the other message, it's a job, right? If I stopped paying you, you'd stop coming. So at some point, I think I crossed the line into how much leeway I give myself to, or how much I let myself think that I affect other people's lives.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If somebody comes to me and says, I'm really struggling, I want to talk. I'll have a much more down-to-earth conversation with them. But as a general message to the team, I spend much more time on encouragement and motivation, and pep talks, and we do a lot of explaining the why. You're familiar with that TED Talk?
Yeah. We also spoke about that in class. Why, how, what, and how. Yeah. Another thing we spoke about in class.
We do a lot of why. We do. I don't like to give out mandates where sort of no explanation to them. I don't owe them an explanation, or I think I do, but meaning that they should do it anyway because I told them to. But you'll be much more effective as a leader, and they'll have a much more fun time doing it if you just tell them why. And by the way, if you tell them why, they might tell you, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. You're stupid."
Or they might say, I get your why, but I don't like your how, because this might be a better way. This is a how that you might want to reconsider. And here, let's talk about the how a little bit. Or I get your why and your how, but what you want out of this is not what you're going to get out of it. And here's the what.
Time.
Oh,
all the time. I have my limited set of information that I gather. When you put 10 more people in a room, there's a much wider sphere of information that they have. And they'll often affect my decisions, and just by explaining to them why. So, to sort of sum up, it's not a topic I broach. It's not a topic I've shared with anyone. Maybe they'll watch this and they'll learn that about me. But I do certainly invest time in making sure that people feel good. I think if you're in a place that doesn't make you feel good, then you're probably going to regret it at some point.
Fair enough. Okay, last major question, and then we're going to chit-chat just for a moment more. And I need to let you go because we will be hitting an hour. My last major question is this. One of the things that I tried to teach in our leadership course, or the leadership aspect of our leadership and strategy course, was that there is a fundamental difference between leadership and management. These may go hand in hand, but really you got leaders and you've got managers, and sometimes someone who's a leader is not a great manager, and someone who's a phenomenal manager is a sucky leader. I'm wondering how you've experienced that in your own work life, and whether or not you see a need for sort of like a room for people who are leaders but not going to be great managers to sort of have their role, maybe even move up in their roles and get more, I don't want to call them benefits, but more recognition from the company for that role of being a leader without necessarily moving up in management. So yeah. How's that played out for you?
So I want to preface by saying I've been in business for like 8 years. I don't know anything. I am so early on this journey that I don't want to pretend I have all the answers. I promise I don't. There's stuff that I figure out every day and stuff that I screw up every day. And, I don't, nobody listening to this should take it as gospel. It's just one guy's opinion
Hey,
on the journey
I've been doing this for like a while in terms of like teaching, and I'm not the book in any way, shape, or form. I can agree with you on that wholeheartedly.
So I'll say that it plays out, right? Anybody who follows the theory, leadership versus management, it plays out every day. The only difference is it's more of a Venn diagram than it is a totally separate list. There's a lot of crossover between them, and you're going to find yourself doing both roles often, right? Mm-hmm. So something we just talked about when it comes to the conversation we just had around, work is work, life is life. Mm-hmm. You need to invest in both. That's more of a leadership type conversation. That's showing empathy, right? That's trying to motivate people. That's clear communication with them. That's really trying to be more of a leader. Management might come 5 seconds after that, where you say, and since we just had that topic, why don't you go ahead and open your calendar? We'll take a look at all the meetings you've got. Let's see if we can't clear some time out of your calendar so you can get home earlier. Right. That's more management.
Right.
So there's definitely a clear delineation, and it's something that I haven't gotten close to mastering either one, but I do certainly feel sometimes when I'm in one mode or the other for too long, right? When I'm all in the leadership mode and I'm all about conflict resolution and setting targets and motivating people, and then I start to feel disconnected from the ground. I start to forget what am I about? What are my people actually doing in the day to day? What are the struggles they're having? What are the I need to go listen to some calls with customers, and I need to go actually reconnect myself to the reality, because I feel like I'm sort of floating up here, and I'm doing leadership work. Then when I get too far into management, I get too far into the numbers, and I get too far into being.
Are people hitting their KPIs? Are their objectives getting hit?
Yeah, which is also leadership. But when I get
what resources are?
When I get too far into okay, why did you miss this number? Right? We had a goal for today and you missed it. Or why is this process broken? And why isn't that information making it through those systems? When I get too deep into that, I start to feel like my team is slipping, right? Like there isn't somebody steering the ship anymore. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely sort of a dance. When it comes to specific people and their potential, it's a prevalent and difficult challenge that's always there, is where you have what you would call individual contributors, and they want to move up in the organization, and it's very clear to you that they should not be managing people.
Okay.
And so, and many people think that the only path up is to be a people manager, right? Happens to be my CTO doesn't manage anybody. His specific mandate is that he doesn't want to manage any people. He wants to run the technology of the business and evangelize the technology of the business. He doesn't want to manage people. But there's only one CTO. So what do you do with everybody else? And so, first of all, within customer success, there's a lot of different, call them tiers. We call them tiers. So, you would start off working with sort of the lower tier customers, right? The ones that are simpler, and the ones that, there's less responsibility, or maybe if we lose one of those customers, the impact to the business is less. And you can move your way up until you typically hit what's called enterprise, which is when you're working with your Amazons and your Microsofts and your Dells and the big guns of the world, and that is a promotion, right? You'll get a title, you'll get more responsibility, your impact on the business grows exponentially. You'll be consulted more on decisions that the business makes, because if the business makes a decision that affects our $1 million customer, you need to know about it, right? So
would you say, I have a question that comes out of that. Would you say that those people are also the people who you kind of expect those lower tier people to say, "Hey, I need some guidance. Can you mentor me for a little bit here? I'm floundering." Or would you say to them, "Hey, I want you to mentor this person. I think they are good. They'll be able to move up, but they need that little bit of help." Are you using them in that way?
So I think mentorship is a fantastic either alternate route or parallel route where
Okay.
you can say, look, I see your value in the position that you're doing right now. I think you're incredibly valuable to the business. I'm watching the results you're bringing in. I'm watching how happy your customers are and how many renewals you're getting, and you're doing fantastically. I need, not want, need you to share that magic. I need you to show the newbies, how are you doing it? Right? How did you get from, where they are right now to where you are right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so mentorship is another great way. But it's always a challenge when when somebody wants something that you don't think they should have. And it's a hard conversation. And then then you get to the other part of it, which is, yeah, okay, you have managers, you have team leads. But what about when a team lead wants to become a director? Right?
Mm-hmm.
A director is a leadership position. Director is already more about strategy. A
It's
director is
less
more
management.
about,
It's less management, more leadership, is what you're saying. You're saying that's that
yeah,
transition from one to the other.
yeah, it's strategy. It's vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's saying I own a function and it's my job to get it from point A to point B. What's point B? I have to define what that is.
Right.
And not everybody can make that jump either. So you'll sort of have, it's obviously a pyramid shape. You'll have people fall off as you go further and further to the top.
Right.
And I don't know which law it is, but you'll sort of rise to the level of your own incompetence. It's a not nice way of saying
Yeah. I hear you.
people are capable of certain things.
Right.
And you have to find a balance of not just what are they capable of, but what will they be happy doing? Because if I go and promote you, and I know you're not going to enjoy it, and 6 months later you're miserable, you're going to leave. But if I don't promote you, we're going to leave anyway. I don't know.
Have you ever had anyone backtrack on you and been like, "Listen, I'm not happy doing this. I want to go back to doing this other thing. Can I do that?" Because I know
So
people who've done that.
I didn't have somebody come to me proactively,
Mm-hmm.
but I went to them
Okay.
and I said, "I'm watching you struggle, and
Okay.
I'm watching you beat yourself up because you're trying to handle two things, and I know you're better at handling one thing. And I don't want to watch you do this anymore. I'd like to propose a change." And we did it. It's not something you want to do in a conference room. We took a walk together, got some lunch, had a chat about it, and they were open to it and receptive, and it wound up working out very well. Long term, I don't know, but in the short term, they wound up saying to me, "You know what? I really have been unhappy. I really have sort of been wondering, is this even an option for me?" So again,
I'm really proud that I'm really proud of you that you would do that, because that takes a lot of guts to go up to someone as a leader and a manager and say to them, "Listen, I can see that you're struggling, but I don't want to lose you. I know you bring worth and value to what we're doing, and I want to have this discussion." And broaching that is a hard thing to do. It can be really difficult.
It's a risk. It's a risk because you might look at me and say, "No, I'm very happy where I am," and then what do I do?
Right.
So I got lucky that the person I was talking to had incredible maturity and a very clear sense of what they're about. But again, I'm a baby at this. I don't know everything. I just know that in that scenario it worked out. Could be next time it blows up my face. I don't know.
So I don't know. That's natural. Okay, I have one last question, and then thank you so much, by the way. I gotta say this has been wonderful. Is there anything that you kind of wish I'd asked and I didn't? Is there anything that you kind of hoped we would talk about that we didn't talk about? Because I would love to talk about something you want to talk about.
Oh man, got a lot of stuff.
Go for it.
I'll say one last thing, really. It's possible that a lot of people who listen to this are students or have recently been students, because I know that's probably where much of your audience will come from, at least initially. I think it's a cool audience. I think it's an audience that's probably underrepresented when it comes to real world advice. So I'll give one piece of advice, something that's been very helpful to me. I don't know if I gave any other advice yet.
You gave lots of advice and it was good. Thank you.
I'll give this piece. It's something my boss said to me here, one of my first days, and it's been very helpful in not just being valuable and saving people a lot of time, but really just in moving up in the organization. Is I never present a problem without a solution. Okay, and it sounds daunting because you don't always know what the solution is. And anytime I do a training session for all the new people that start on my team, and I ask them a sort of a stupid question. I ask them, okay, you're sitting at home, you're eating on the couch, and the rug gets dirty. What do you do? And it's a silly over exaggerated example, but somebody will say, well, I'll get the vacuum. Okay. I'll sweep it up. Perfect. And then I'll take it into the absurd. I'll say to them, well, why don't you throw out the rug and buy a new one? Or let's take it even crazier. Why don't you go move, get a new house, right? Or buy a dog to clean up the
Right.
The point is not that you're always going to have the best solution. The point is just to show I spent 2 minutes thinking about it and I came up with a solution. Even if the solution is really dumb, you want to show people that you're not the kind of person that just creates problems. You're the kind of person that has the forethought and the capacity to present a solution. And people will appreciate it even if it's not the right one. And you know what? Sometimes it is the right one. And some people, if they're new or inexperienced, they're worried about presenting solutions. But in reality, because they're new and inexperienced, they have no bad habits. And they don't know anything about what they're exploring right now. And so they may come up with something no one's ever thought of before. So if you are working for a manager, leader, anything, they will love you for being their solution person. And as you go and as you learn, as you get more experience, your solutions will get better and better. That's what I'd say.
Wow, I think that's really insightful. And I think that that's a great lesson for people to learn, not just in customer success. I think that that's true, as like you're saying, across the board, no matter what you're doing. Sales doesn't matter. Being able to say, hey, we have a problem. Here's a solution that I've come up with. It may not be the best one, but it's enough to at least start the conversation and also acknowledge that you're open to solutions. You're also saying, don't come and say, this is the solution. You're saying, here is a solution that I've come up with. Can we discuss this? Is it like, let's open this for discussion? So is that what you're saying? Did I get that right?
100%. If you are, and the carry-on effect of that is people will come to you when they have problems because you're somebody who knows how to come up with a solution. I don't take for granted people that can come up with solutions. Not everyone's capable of it. And you'll start getting pulled into conversations. Hey, Sarah's a solution person. Let's bring her in. And then when they're looking for the next person to promote, well, why don't we promote the person that solves problems? Let's give Sarah the promotion. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's only valuable, and it'll start to change how you look at situations. You won't, you get a really weird, mortgage bill. I don't know. You're not going to sit down on the floor and cry. You're going to start thinking analytically. What do I do about this? What's the solution here?
Right. So you're saying it's something that applies not just to, you're saying this is something strategic that doesn't just apply to business, but this is something you feel people should apply to in their everyday lives as a way to deal with their problems. Don't just see the problem, but figure out a solution and then start talking to people to help figure out the best solution given the circumstances.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Okay, that's a great lesson. Thank you very much.
You got it.
I've actually learned quite a bit today, and I have to say thank you very much for giving me over an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. I know that you are a very, very busy person.
My pleasure.
I don't have anything else but to say thank you, and thank you all our listeners for listening to the Doctor's Den and checking in here. And I hope you've learned something from Jeff, because I definitely have, and hope to see you at the next episode. Thank you for joining us in the Doctor's Den. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hope to see you next time.